Dear Royal Educare.
Okay, what does it say? Now, what does the message say?
Hello, sir. I am not
One
audible.
minute.
Some problem. You can start.
So I can start, no problem, no.
Sir.
Okay, let me start. See, my voice is audible to you all?
Sir.
Ramya?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. How is the rain there in Kerala? How is the rain in Kerala? Has it come down?
Sir, it's calm down.
Okay, 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 okay. Dear students, I'm happy to meet you again in another set of sessions meant for yet another unit of your LIS coaching. Unit 9, research methodology. It's a very conventional topic. Maybe you may be preparing for research methodology both for your first paper and for library science. So this paper has got its appearance both in the first paper and in the library science paper. We have got 10 units here in research methodology. So we start with what is research, functions or scope of the research, types of research, methods of research. Then we talk about what is a research design, how you can select a problem for your research, how to conduct review of literature, and what about hypothesis, how to frame the hypothesis, how to test the hypothesis, what are the various sampling techniques we have, what are different methods that can be adopted for collecting data from the respondents, how to analyze the data so collected from the respondents, what are different statistical packages that are available for analyzing the data so collected. Once the data collection is over, analysis is over, then report writing, how to write the report, what should be the structure or contents of your research report, what style manual you can follow, what about the availability of online citation tools, reference management tools, anti-plagiarism tools, and how to evaluate the research work what you have done. So these are all first 7 units. They talk about introduction to research and how you can start and do a research work. Fine. And unit 8 and 9th, we talk about metric studies in library science, the so-called scientometrics, webometrics, infometrics, altmetrics, and the metrics, what you can have to assess an individual or an institution or a journal, research metrics. 10th unit, we talk about recent trends in library and information science. Fine. So today, I will have to cover first 2 units, 9.1 and 9.2, which talks about introduction to research and the types and methods of research. Okay. So in fact, it's a kind of a theoretical presentation. It's not something very new to you. You might have studied about all these methods in the early years. Maybe I think this class will work a kind of a refreshing thing for you. Okay, you may refresh your mind and you may also give your input at the end of the session. Okay, let me begin my presentation. 9.1. So we talk about research. Research means research, searching again and again. But that search should be meaningful. That should be systematic. It's not simply going and searching something in the Haymarket. You should have well-planned procedures and methodologies to search for something. And that search, systematized search, that should be directed towards a purpose. You are searching for a particular thing, a particular piece of information. You are doing your search with a particular purpose. And what would be the end of this search and research and research? Either you will find out something very new, okay? Either you'll find out something very new, something which was not available in the world till date, something very new, or whatever is already available, you try to refine it, you try to modify it, you try to apply the old concept in a new environment, in a new situation, in a new set of people, in a new laboratory conditions. So either you discover something very new, or you take the old one and you modify, update, upgrade, and bring some changes in the already existing concepts. Both these are considered as the end results of any research. Okay, good. Some definitions for research. There's a definition which says that research is a systematic inquiry. Okay, it's not an ordinary inquiry. It is a very, very systematic. Systematic means well planned. Before you start the work, you plan everything. What is the first step? What is the second step? What is the third step? You have decided everything well in advance. So it's a systematic inquiry. And what are we going to do in this inquiry? We are going to either describe or explain or predict some phenomenon. Let it be any phenomenon, an individual, a situation, a behavior, a happening, an occurrence, a behavior, anything can be described, explained, or even you can predict. Using research, you may predict what would happen to this particular kind of situation in future. Fine. So he says research involves inductive and deductive methods. You know very well, whenever we talk about research, we talk about two different methods, inductive method and deductive methods. In inductive methods, we are moving from individual, individual to general. For example, you say that Ramya is a good girl, Navina is a good girl, Ranjita is a good girl. All these girls are in Ernakulam. So Ernakulam is a good city. Okay. So from individual inferences, you are trying to form a common generalized conclusion. That is called inductive method. The other one is deductive method. Here you say that Ernakulam is a good city. So Ramya is living in Ernakulam. So Ramya is a good girl. So this kind of research method is called deductive method. So either you move from individual to general, or you move from general to individual. Okay, that is what the definition given by Robert. In general, research means you have to search for some knowledge, a knowledge which was not there previously. You search for knowledge, and in fact, it is a scientific quest. Okay, you are having some kind of thirst, some kind of quest. What for certain information. Okay, you have a specific topic. In the specific topic, you are searching for only a limited number of well-defined certain information. You are not searching for everything in this world. You are searching only for a particular piece of information on the chosen topic. Fine. So research refers to a systematized method where what are you going to do? You are going to define the problem. You are going to do a kind of review of literature. You are going to prepare your research design, select the sample, collect the data, analyze the data, and come to conclusions. So this is a general social science research you can come across. So research is always moving from a process of moving from known to unknown. So we are always trying to go from what we know to what we don't know. So we know some tools, some techniques. With that, we are applying and we are trying to find something which is not there before. So that is a kind of a tedious march towards moving from known to unknown concept. Fine. Okay, what is the purpose of research? So you take any research, any kind of research, the purpose of any research is to get answers for the questions you have. See, any research begins with a research question. You have a research question. To get the answer for these questions, you conduct the research. You are trying to find out some truth which is not open till now, something hiding, something hidden somewhere. You use some kind of research tools and techniques to bring out those hidden tools, hidden truths. Fine. But basically we say, based on the kind of research you undertake, the purpose of research can be categorized into four. See, first purposes of any research is to gain familiarity with the phenomenon. See, there is a concept. You don't know much about this concept. So you want to know more and more about this concept. You do a research. Something like God's particle. We don't know much about it. You do a research to know more and more about God's particle. That is called the exploratory or formulative research studies. The first objective. Second objective, you take a group of people or you take a situation, maybe a library, maybe a program in a library or a service in a library or a technical aspect in a library. You try to describe it. You try to portray its qualities and characteristics. So that kind of research is called as descriptive research studies. So either you want to do a research study to know more about a lesser known topic, or you want to simply describe a situation or a group of people. And thirdly, you may try to find out when a particular happening occurs a good number of times. We are checking how frequently a particular event takes place, why it takes place, what may be the probable causes for its occurrence. So that kind of studies are called diagnostic research studies. Maybe frequent fever, frequent body pain in a particular society, frequent cough and frequent vomiting in a particular area. So repeatedly it happens. You're trying to find out what happens behind it. So diagnostic research. Then lastly, we have kind of social science research where we frame the hypothesis, we collect data. After collecting data, we check whether the hypothesis can be accepted or not accepted. So that is called hypothesis testing research. So these four are the very common purposes of any research. Good. Then when you do research, there is something called scope and limitations of your research work. Okay, that's always there. For example, you see a research title like this: Bibliometric Study of Madurai Kamaraj University, research output of Madurai Kamaraj University. Only this is available in the title. By seeing this title, we may not be able to identify whether we are studying the research output of Madurai Kamaraj University from its starting till date, or only 10 years, or only 20 years, or only science faculty, or only social science faculty, or only journal articles are undergoing bibliometric treatment. So we don't know anything about this research. So scope is a concept that is going to delimit your research area, that is going to tell exactly what you are actually going to do in your research work. Okay. For example, one of my friends in Hyderabad, she's doing a research on assessment of library resources and services among patrons of B schools in Hyderabad city. The title she has chosen. But just by seeing the title, we cannot come to a conclusion whether the researcher is studying about the faculty members or students or research scholars or not teaching stuff. We don't know anything. So we need to have, maybe in the third chapter called research design and methodology, you need to have a heading called scope and limitation, where you are going to tell exactly what you are going to actually do in your research work. For example, I am doing a research means my scope will be, I am going to concentrate on the students, those who are studying in CBSE schools only, not in the state board schools, not in ICSE schools. And I am going to collect question only from the students, those who are hailed from, those who are studying in Thrissur and Palakkad districts, not from any other district. So maybe a geographical boundary. Or you can say, I am going to study about the history of Kerala Library Association from 2005 to 2010, not in any other years, maybe in terms of time. Or you can say, I am going to evaluate the information literacy skills of postgraduate students using Scornell 7 pillars model. So I am not using any other model. I am using only Scornell 7 pillars model. So this way I am going to delimit, I am going to give restrictions, I am going to give a boundary, I am going to give area of operation for my research work. I am going to work only within this particular framework. That framework is called as scope of your research work. Fine? Is clear? Okay. Then ethics of research. So nowadays, whenever you do research, people say that you should follow some ethical guidelines, some moral principles, some standards of conduct are to be followed when you are doing a research, when you are reporting your results, when you are publishing your research work. Some guidelines, moral guidelines are there. They are called as ethics of research. What are they? Let us have a small look at all those principles. Honesty. You should be very honest in reporting the data, in reporting the results, in reporting the methods and procedures you followed for your research work. What is the publication status of your research work? And you're not supposed to fabricate, falsify, or misinterpret data. That is not to be done by you. For example, you collect data from 100 students, but in your research work, you are telling that I have collected data from 200 students. So that is not the correct way. Or you have collected data from 100 students, and the answer is no to a particular question. Majority say no to a particular question. But you feel that no, that is not good to show no for this particular question. If it is yes means it will be nice, that is commonly accepted. Let me put yes instead of no. So that kind of falsification of data, you're not supposed to. You should be very, very honest in your reporting results. Then objectivity. That means your personal beliefs, your personal ideas, your personal perceptions should not play any role. Maybe in choosing the experimental design, maybe in the data analysis, maybe in the data interpretation. So doing data interpretation, see, you are working in a government college. So you are doing a comparative study of students' use of government college libraries and private college libraries. So when you are writing the interpretation, you always write that government school children are doing the library, working in the library, using the library very well. That kind of personal bias and objectivity should not be there. Even in your other aspects, like even peer review. So you know about peer review. If you are a member of the editorial board of a journal, the papers submitted by the authors will be sent to the peer reviews. Okay, for the peers, experts will go through. See, once you get a paper from a particular place, you should not come to a conclusion that this particular person is from my state or my district, so let it be. We'll say, okay, let this paper be published. So that kind of objectivity should not be there in research. Then integrity means your words, thoughts, and action should be the same. Okay, there should be always a consistent, sincere work from you. And whatever promises, whatever agreements you have committed, you have to see that you are keeping up all your promises to the core of it. Okay. Then carefulness. When you're doing a research, you should be very, very careful. You should avoid all the negligent mistakes. You should avoid all those things. Fine. Openness, it means that you should be ready to share your data, share your results, share your ideas, tools, and resources with other researchers, those who are doing research in the same field, so that exchange of ideas will take place. And when you are giving your ideas to others, when they are criticizing your research work, you should be able to accept the criticism. You should be able to access the new ideas which they will give you. Then respect for intellectual property. So whenever you are using others' content, maybe a quotation, maybe you have taken some formula from others, or you've taken some ideas of others, whenever you're using something from others' mind and you are using those ideas, you should properly acknowledge it by giving proper references in a proper style. You should acknowledge it. If there is any even unpublished data also, please understand, without permission, you are not supposed to even use those data. And you have to give credit whenever due. No plagiarism. What is plagiarism? Copying the content of others, ideas of others, findings of others, methods of others, and using as if they are all your own ideas, your own findings, your own methods. So that plagiarism should be avoided. Then confidentiality. Whenever you have some data, maybe something like you are doing a research about the patients, those who are suffering from a particular disease, or you are dealing something with the trade secrets of a particular company, or military secrets, or personal information of the respondents. So you should keep them confidential. Okay, only for your research purpose, you should make use of all the data, and you should not leak or disclose all these confidential data. Then responsible publication. So when you have to publish a paper, you have to publish a paper for the purpose of advancing knowledge in that particular field. See that next year I have got to due, I have to go from 6,000 to 7,000. Just for the sake of publishing some papers, we should not publish papers. Okay, no duplicate publications, no wasteful publications. See, same publication you should not publish in 2 journals. Okay, same article with a small change the title, you should not publish it in 2 different titles. Then that is not the ethical way of doing research. Then social responsibility. Whenever you do a research, see that your research results have some kind of useful thing for the society. Your findings will be helping the society to remove at least some of its problem, to reduce some of the problems. It is for the betterment of the people at mass. So that kind of research works you should undertake. Non-discrimination, maybe you should not have any kind of discrimination with regard to your colleagues or with the participants, the students, on the basis of their gender, their race, ethnicity, color, nativity, educational qualification. No discrimination should be shown by a researcher. Okay. Then competence. See, as a researcher, you should always try to develop your competence. It is not that since the date of registration till the date of completion of your research, you should keep on learning whatever is possible, all the technical competence, all the administrative competence, research competence, you should be able to develop yourself. Legality, very simple, you should obey the rules. Whether it is by a government or by an institution, you should obey the rules. If a rule says that you are not supposed to collect this data from so and so people, you should not collect. If you are not supposed to do research on cloning, you should not do research on cloning. You should obey the rules and regulations of institutions, organizations, or the country. Then animal care. If you are doing any research with animals, see that you are not disturbing the animals. You are carrying them properly. You give due respect to animals, and your experiments are well constructed. Okay, they are constructed in such a manner that they don't disturb the animals much. Then human subjects. If you are treating with the humans, always see that harms and risks are to be minimized and benefits are to be maximized. Okay, their confidentiality, their autonomy, their personal details should be always kept in confidence. Okay, kept in the utmost confidence of you. Fine. So these are the few ethical principles that you should remember whenever you do your research. Fine. Then comes types of research by its use. Let us see them one by one. So basic research, which is also called as fundamental research, pure research, or theoretical research, all are same. See, what we are trying to do in this pure research is that we are concerning ourselves with the generalization. So we just want to have a basic understanding of a concept. Okay, we want to develop and create a new theory. See, we are doing this research so that we will find out something very new that will be added to the already existing knowledge of that particular subject. I want to develop the subject. I want to advance the subject. I want to find out new concepts, new theories. So that kind of research is called as basic research or pure research. Here we are trying to have a search for broad principles. So we don't have any very specific objectives in our mind. We want to find out some broad principles that can be applied in many areas of subjects. Okay, so in pure research, we are developing, we are formulating, we are modifying the theories, the laws, the principles, the formula, all those things. Okay, fine. For example, in pure research, we can have these examples. Discovery of electricity. It is a pure research because when electricity was invented, the inventor was not having any specific application for electricity. Electricity was invented, it was given to the world, and we started, other researchers, we started using electricity for many purposes. So goes with 5 laws of library science. It is a very common law, 5 laws. It can be applied to any subject of library science, whether it is classification or cataloging or book selection or administration or library management, information sources, anywhere you can apply these 5 laws of library science. So these kind of laws are having very broad application. Okay, they are not developed to meet a particular purpose, to solve a particular problem. They have very common layer. For example, if you take principles of book selection, it can be applied for any kind of books, any subject books, e-books or periodicals or magazines or pamphlets, research reports, whatever you want to buy in a library, you can make use of the principles of book selection given by Melville Dewey. So these are the few examples for pure research. Good. Then comes applied research. Just against the pure research, applied research, we are trying to find out a solution. Okay, maybe there is a problem in the society, maybe a problem in the society, or one business organization is suffering from a particular problem. So this research is conducted with a particular aim. So we have very, very clear, focused research. We are trying to find a solution for a problem. Fine. For example, see, you know, when you are on circulation counter, there are many methods that can be adopted by you for lending and issuing books to users. So you can conduct a research on which is the best method for charging and discharging books in the circulation counter. So that is an example of applied research. See, what you do is that, see, whatever theories, principles, formulae were found out in the basic research, all those things are applied in applied research. For example, action research, case studies, clinical research, R&D, research and development, they are all part and parcel of applied research categories. Again, few examples. See, canon of recall value. See, I told you what is canon of recall value. When a particular title or the name of the author consists of multi-words, you should decide what is the word that can be recalled by the users. You should find out. Then only you can form your subject entries properly in the cataloging. So to find out that, Ranganathan has given a special rule called canon of recall value. Fine. So you are working in a library. You need to find out, sir, 400, 500 journals are published in biochemistry. Which journal I should purchase? I should subscribe to my library. I should find out. What is the solution? Yes, Bradford has given the law of scattering to find out the core journals of a particular discipline. Then chain procedure to derive subject entries. So these are all applied research. Fine. Good. See, for example, you're talking about these cases. See, you want to create a system in your library so that whenever you are receiving journals, they should be recorded. If any journal has not reached the library in time, the system has to automatically send a reminder to the publishers. So that is a kind of a applied research. See, in your library, you feel that technical reports are very, very less used by the students of a B school. So you can do a research on that, applied research. And there is always the problem of decreasing space in the library. So how to solve this problem? The problem of space. So these are all examples of applied research. Then comes action research, which is also called as problem solving research or practitioner based research. See, action research also a kind of applied research. This is also conducted to solve a problem. And mostly people say action research is conducted to solve the in-house problem, the local problem, the problem what you face in your office, in your library, in your section in the library. It's very, very, very specific local in-house problems. And apart from that, they say in the action research, the researcher is working hands in hands with the affected population. For example, so you are conducting a test on the information literacy skills of first year students. So what you do is that you sit with them, you evaluate their information literacy skills, you find out the problems, you conduct some information literacy classes, again you conduct tests on them. So you be with them, you do all kinds of activities, taking participants also into your group, you do research. So that kind of research is called as action research. Actually, this particular action research was developed in 1930s in education. As I told you, emphasis will be on local problem. See, for example, you are trying to find out how I can increase and improve the circulation and use of periodicals among the research scholars of my college. So that is your local problem, in-house problem. You can go for action research. And what kind of techniques you can follow in action research? You can have interviews with the respondents. You can follow Delphi method, which we'll discuss a bit later. face-to-face dialogue, evaluation, feedback analysis, all those techniques can be used for conducting action research. And according to Majola, action research is equal to action plus research. So research is nothing but knowledge generated in previous researches, maybe in pure research. So that particular knowledge is applied in action research. Fine. So what are the characteristics? As I told you, see, action research is conducted in series of cycles. So it's not a one-stop research. It is a series of steps. See, for example, you take the first step, okay? You form a hypothesis, you test the hypothesis, you get the results. Based on the results, you think about the second step. So this way, you will conduct as many cycle of research activities as required. That is one peculiar point of action research. That means you keep on conducting research in phases, in series of cycles. And you are moving ahead in the next cycle. And apart from this, I told you, when you're doing research, you are taking as much as space possible the people around you, maybe informants, respondents, interpreters, planners, administrators, researchers. So you can take all these people and carry out research. And people say action research is a heuristic method. In the sense, your second action is based on the results of the first action. Your third action is based on the results of second action. So that kind of a typical characteristics is possessed by action research. Okay. Then comes evaluative research. Many a time we conduct evaluative research in libraries. Here we are trying to measure how effective our library services are, how effective our library programs, how effectively we are functioning, how effectively our collections are satisfying the information needs of the users. So we are checking the effectiveness, whether the policies, programs, and services of our library, whatever we initiated, whether they were successful or they are not successful. Whether in a particular library, the library was able to achieve the objectives, what it framed in the beginning, whether they were able to achieve, they're not able to achieve. So these kinds of evaluations are taking place in evaluative research. See, we can have one kind of evaluation in terms of cost. So how much amount you spend in a particular program and what is the outcome. That is known as cost benefit analysis. There is a gentleman called Powell. He classified evaluative research into three categories: summative research, formative research, and performance measurement. What is formative evaluation? See, when you are implementing a particular software, when the implementation is going on, you go and evaluate it. That is known as formative assessment. When you are doing a particular program is completed. Once the program is completed, then you go and evaluate it. That is called summative evaluation. For example, evaluation of library management software, evaluation of library UPAC, and such kind of things. Good. Then comes interdisciplinary research. So here we are taking the knowledge, tools, and skills of more than one discipline. These tools and techniques are synthesized, they are integrated into each other, and we are doing research. The people, those who are having a kind of craze for the specialization, they bring all other things and fuse them into library science. See, for example, we talk about use of blocks in libraries, use of big data in libraries, use of machine learning in libraries, Web 2.0 tools in libraries. See, we take the idea, tool, techniques, and contents of other subjects, and we are integrating them into library science, and we are doing a kind of interdisciplinary research. For example, as I told you, Web 2.0 in libraries, history of Indian public libraries. See, public library is our subject. History is not our subject. So we have borrowed the history from other subject. We are integrating into our subject. Psychology of college library users. So the concept psychology has come from another subject. We are infusing it into our library science. Here, there is an overlapping of disciplines. One subject is fused, integrated into other subject, and we do research. This kind of research is getting very popular these days in library science. Then comes multidisciplinary research. This is also a research where we are trying to get knowledge from many subjects. But the difference is that here we get the concept, ideas, techniques from many subjects, but we are not going to integrate, we are not going to fuse all the techniques together. Please understand. See, you are doing a research towards a truth. For that, you are making use of the various specialized branches, but you're having one common idea, only one purpose. For example, you want to get rid of COVID-19. Okay, that is a purpose. So now we are doing a multidisciplinary research. Okay, we have got people from psychology, we got people from allopathy, people from Ayurvedam, people from Unani, people from naturopathy, people from yoga. Okay, all these people, they come together. Everybody gives his or her knowledge. All this knowledge, we pool them together, and all the knowledge is going to be used in a coordinated research form, in a cooperative research form. That means we take concept, skill, knowledge from all the disciplines. We are using all the tools, all the techniques in a cooperative way to solve a particular problem. That is called multidisciplinary research. Good. Here is small clarification. Intradisciplinary research, within one particular discipline you do research, intradisciplinary. Then cross-disciplinary, you are analyzing one subject from the point of view of another subject. I think in classical you might have studied, no? Mathematics for engineers, statistics for librarians. So that kind of cross-disciplinary studies. Then comes multidisciplinary. Here, we take the knowledge from many disciplines, and all these people are working together towards a common purpose. But in the case of interdisciplinary, whatever knowledge you take from all the disciplines, you are integrating them, you are synthesizing all the approaches, and you are trying to give a kind of a unified approach, integrated, unified approach towards a problem. That is called interdisciplinary. Fine. Then comes quantitative and qualitative research. You know very well. In the quantitative research, we talk about the measurement of quantity, amount, numbers. See, whatever concepts, whatever phenomena that can be expressed in terms of quantity will be analyzed in quantitative research. In the case of qualitative research, the quality, the variety, the characteristics, the traits of the individuals, the quality of the organizations, your level of satisfaction, those kinds of qualitative things are analyzed in qualitative research. I think this is clear. Then comes conceptual versus empirical research. See, the purpose of any conceptual research is to develop new concepts or to give new interpretation to the already existing theory. That is called conceptual research. But when you talk about empirical research, whenever your research is entirely dependent on your experience, your observation, your data, that is called empirical research. So your research is data-based research. You go to the people, you collect data, you observe, you talk to them, you make them give the answer, you collect the data, you analyze the data and come to a conclusion. So that is the empirical research, which is also called data-based research, which can be verified. Okay, once you collect data, the same data can be collected again for the purpose of verification if required. Good. Okay. So far I talked about 9.1. It's a very theoretical explanation of different kinds of research. Maybe I think I will continue the remaining theoretical points also, so that if there is any other doubt clarification, I think we can discuss at the end also, or even now if you want also, if you want to ask any query or clarification on the topics we have discussed so far, you may please raise your questions, please. Any question?
Sir,
Yes, please.
sir, can you please explain the empirical and conceptual once more?
Okay, fine. For example, you are having a theory. What is a theory? If you take a reference service, how reference service is to be rendered. There is a theory called minimal reference theory. That means whenever users come to library, you provide the minimum required reference materials to users. That is a philosophy behind this theory. In conceptual research, what you can do is that you can verify whether this particular theory is holding good even now, or whether I can interpret or reinterpret, I can modify the theory, or I can restate the theory in a different sense, or can I apply this theory in some other areas, some other situations. So that is called conceptual theory. When you take empirical study, in the empirical research, you don't depend on creating any theory. You are not testing any theory. What you do is that you have a problem, you define the problem, you have objectives, you have a research design, you choose a sample, go to people, either observe them or talk to them or collect the questionnaire. Based on the questionnaire, you bring out conclusions. So your research will be based on the data what you collect from the respondents in the form of observation, in the form of questionnaire, in the form of interview. So that kind of research is called as empirical research. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other question, please?
Sir,
Yes,
can
please.
can you please explain about the hypothesis?
Yes, sure. Actually, hypothesis is in the 9.3. Maybe when I handle a session tomorrow, I'm sure I have got a good number of slides on hypothesis. I will tell you what is hypothesis, what are the different kinds of hypothesis, how to frame the hypothesis, what are the sources for hypothesis, how to test the hypothesis. See, all these things will be covered in tomorrow's session. So I don't want to spend time on hypothesis today. Is it okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So shall I go ahead? Maybe if any other question is there, you can always ask me at the end of the session, no problem. Okay, let me proceed with unit 9.2, which once again talks about different research methods. Okay, good. So types of research by purpose, you have exploratory research, descriptive research, or explanatory research. What is exploratory research? See, whenever you want to explore a new concept is come to the market. Okay, for example, we have got something called Internet of Things, IoT. We say IoT. So IoT is a recent concept. I want to explore to what extent IoT can be used in libraries. So I want to explore a new concept. See, people don't know much about the implications or practical uses of Internet of Things in a library environment. So I do research on that. So I want to know more and more about this particular application libraries. So that kind of research is called as exploratory research. For example, so far, whenever students come to library, we provide them books or journals or reports, these kind of things as information resources. But a question comes here, to what extent you can make use of the information available in social media networking sites like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whether these also can be recommended and given to students as reliable information sources? So we don't know. It's a new concept. So when you're doing a research on this particular concept, it means that you are doing an exploratory research. In exploratory research, I think somebody's mic is not muted, I think. You can kindly mute your mics. Okay, good. Thank you so much. Here in exploratory research, researchers are trying to find out some creative research problems, some innovative research problems, something which was not done by anybody so far. Because it is an exploratory research, we are going to explore about it. So you can take any newly formed topic, or you can develop your own topic, a new topic which was not discussed by any review of literature. You can do your research. That is called exploratory research. Okay. But please understand, in many cases, exploratory research will not become the main research. Okay. So exploratory research is normally used by the people to check the viability of your research topic. So you have a research topic, you want to check whether this topic is viable or not, whether it is feasible or not. I want to check. Or there is a topic, you want to get more ideas about that particular topic. You want to know what are the various techniques available to conduct this study. So to know more and more about these problems, you conduct a exploratory study, you get the ideas, and then accordingly, you make necessary modifications in your original research problem. So this exploratory research helps you to make your research problem more concrete, very concise, very formally worded, so that by conducting an exploratory study, you have a thorough review of literature, you talk to the experts, you come to a conclusion of what my research topic is going to be. So that is why exploratory research is also called as formulative studies. They are called formulative because they are helping you to formulate your research problem in a very, very concise, in a very, very concrete way. Fine. So exploratory research studies are helping you to pave the way for your final research. They are giving you a map so that your final research problem can be formulated and you can start your journey of research. Fine. Please understand this. Then what are steps in exploratory research studies? As usual, you want to explore a new concept. So you conduct the review of literature first, so that you come to understand what kind of researchers were conducted already in my field, chosen field, review of literature. Then you talk to the experts, talk to your colleagues to share the experience, to share the wisdom. You collect all the necessary inferences from all these people. And then based on review of literature, based on your talks with the experts, you have some idea. You have this idea in your mind for some time. You think about it, work on it in your mind. So let your research idea becomes a matured research idea. Once you get some kind of rough idea about your research problem, you can conduct a very, very basic fundamental research studies or a very small experimental study to find out what are the variables that can be used for your research work. Once you find out the variables, you can frame the hypothesis. You are not going to test the hypothesis. You are going to frame the hypothesis. So once variables are fixed, once hypotheses are known, then you delimit your research area. Delimit means your scope of your study. Once you do all these things, you will be having a very, very workable, a feasible topic in your hand. That is the outcome of any exploratory research study. Okay, fine. Then comes the descriptive research, a very popular research method in social sciences, where we are trying to just describe what is the state of affairs of a particular thing, a particular library, a particular set of users, or particular technology used in a library. See, we are just reporting what is happening in a particular place, in a particular library. Okay, so we are trying to find out, you take any current situation, we are trying to study the situation, we are trying to understand the situation, and we are trying to report what is the current status of that situation. So that is what a descriptive research work is all about. Here we worry about what, who, when, and where of a current situation. Fine. In fact, in sometimes people have got a different name for descriptive research design, that is called as ex post facto research, especially in social science and business research. We have a name called ex post facto research. Actually, when you say ex post facto research, it means that, see, you have an event, you have an incident that is over. There is an event which is over. Once the event is over, you go to the particular spot, particular library, you find out what is the current situation now. So you don't have any control over the variance. Okay, you cannot observe what happened, but whatever is there at present, you go describe the situation. That is called ex post facto research. And in social sciences, this is a very, very popular and principal method followed by everybody. Here in this method, we are not making use of any kind of experiments. We talk only about analysis of data and interpretation of data. See, many different research studies can be placed under the umbrella term called descriptive research. Survey studies, case studies, field studies, fact-finding inquiries, comparative methods, development studies, content analysis, they're all belonging to descriptive research studies. So you might have heard about the development studies, how a particular thing has developed over a period of time. Comparative study, you compare two things. Content analysis, you take a particular text, you find out to what extent particular term appears over there, what terms have frequently occurred, what are the terms that occurred joined to each other, which concepts are prominently discussed and described and analyzed in a particular text, content analysis. So all these are nothing but descriptive research works. For example, you are doing a research on current status of institutional repositories in India. Okay, we don't do anything. We just go and find out how many are there, where are they, who is conducting, how many papers are there, what are the problems they are having. You just analyze. That is called descriptive research study. In library science also, we have many number of research studies which belong to descriptive in nature. For example, we are doing a survey of how reference service is going on in school libraries, in children's libraries in Tamil Nadu. Or you want to find out the reading habits of housewives from Dakshin Karnataka. Or you want to do a survey on information needs of geoscientists in CSIR laboratories. All these are descriptive research studies. And what kind of tools you can use? You can use observation, you can use questionnaires, you can use interviews in descriptive research method. Good. Okay. See, what are the stages? What are steps in conducting a descriptive research? First of all, you should choose a very broader area. Okay. You have a very broader area. Then you do a literature review, a thorough literature review to find out what previous works were done, what methodology others followed, what are the findings, what are the problems, what is the gap. Okay. After doing this, you exactly find out what is the problem on which you are going to work. Good. Then you come, what is to be surveyed, from whom you need to collect data, your sampling, design, all those things. Then you collect data, you collate them, you put tally marks and all, you code them, you tabulate them, you conduct some statistical analysis, and you draw the conclusions. Then you report it. This is a very typical stages in conducting a descriptive research study. Okay, good. Then comes explanatory research or casual research. Here, we are trying to find out the reasons, the causes for a particular happening. So there is a specific event in the library. We want to find out why this particular event takes place. Say a good number of papers are torn from the magazines. Okay. Lot of question papers are stolen by the students. We want to find out what may be the causes behind all these things. So there is a peculiar behavior among the students. There is a special attitude among the students. There is a special school of thought. A group of library science professionals, they are proposing a new concept, a new theory. So you want to find out what may be the reasons, causes for the proposing this particular thought. So whenever something happens, you are going to give explanation for why did it happen? What are the causes for it? Why this particular incident took place? How this particular incident took place? You are giving reasons. So that kind of research is called as explanatory research. For example, in these days, most of the engineering colleges, you can see the RFID tag, the RFID security guard is installed, CCTV camera is kept in all the libraries. That means we are trying to improve the security measures in the library. So you can take up a study and try to find out what may be the reasons for implementing all these security gates and CCTV mechanism in libraries. What are the reasons for it? So that kind of study is called as explanatory research work. Okay. Then we can divide the researchers based on the time span of data collection. See, we have cross-sectional research. That means whenever you conduct any research, you collect data from the respondents, you collect data from the samples only once. Only one time you go to people, collect data, you come, analyze and give the report. For example, you do research on the status of computerization of college libraries in Mumbai city. In Mumbai city, you select some 40 colleges. You take 1 or 2 months time. You go to each and every college. You collect data. Your research is over. You are not going second time, third time to collect same data from same population from same college. You are not doing that. Okay, that kind of study is called as cross-sectional research or one-shot study. Only one time data collection work takes place. Against to this, we have longitudinal research. In longitudinal research, the researcher is collecting data from the respondents not once, at least twice. Okay, so we collect data about the happenings in multiple times. It is not restricted to one time. And we have 3 different types of longitudinal research. One is time series research. Okay, for example, you take general population. Okay, for example, the users who joined the public library in 2008, 2010, 2012. You have 3 different sets of people, all of them belonging to 3 different timings. You go to people, you collect data from them in different timing, time series data. That is called time series research. Then comes panel study. In panel study, you have same set of people, maybe some 30 or 40, 100 people, same sample, but you collect data from same sample twice or thrice. For example, you are studying the information literacy skills of first year engineering students. You studied, okay. When they come to second year, again you go to same people and collect data. When they come to third year, again you go to them and collect data. When they come to fourth year, again you go to them and collect data. That is called panel study. Same samples, data is collected more than once. Then comes cohort study, a study which is very, very popular in medical and clinical field. Here, we collect data from samples, those who are having common characteristics, but they're not same. That means we are not collecting data from same sample. We are going to collect data from different samples who belong to a common feature. For example, in Tamil Nadu in 2014, around 56 librarians joined the college librarian post in 2014. So I'm going to do a survey on computer literacy skills of these 56 librarians, those who joined in 2014. Okay, how I'm going to collect data? I am going to have subset of my population. So I'm going to take only the people, those who are posted in South Tamil Nadu. I collect data. Then next year, I go to northern part of librarians, collect data. Then after 1 year, I go to western part. After 1 year, I go to northern part. So that way, I collect data from the sample which is having a common quality, common characteristics. But I am not collecting the data from the same samples again and again. This time north, that time south. So I go different samples, but all these samples are part and parcel of one population which is having a common quality. That is called as cohort study. Okay. So all the 3 are longitudinal research works. Good. Then comes quantitative and qualitative. Already I discussed. So let me skip this particular slide. Then in 1950s, the 2 gentlemen, Helmer and Dahlke from Rand Corporation, they initiated this particular research method. See this framework. See, we are going to the user's behavior after 5 years, after 10 years. What is going to happen to social development, economic development, industrial development, coal industries, or service industries after 10 years. So whenever you want to choose one facilitator who is going to conduct this particular survey, fine. Then you select 10 to 15 years experience, working experience in the chosen field of study. Okay, you select some and you send a copy to each and every one of the experts. So all the 15 experts, they will get a copy of the questionnaire. So they fill the questionnaire based on their experience, their knowledge, their wisdom in the particular topic. So they all fill the answers. After they fill, they'll return the questionnaire to the facilitator. So I'm the facilitator. I collect all the 15 questionnaires and I compile all the answers. For the first question, he has given this answer. X has given this answer. B and C, they have given this particular. I compile the answers for each and every question. After compiling all the answers, then again the answers along with one more empty questionnaire will be sent to all the 15 experts. Second round. The second round, if you are expert, what will you do? You have a questionnaire and you have the answers of all the experts, you know. So you start thinking. So I have given one answer for question number 7. For the same question number 7, other experts have given different answers. You will read the answers. You will read their explanations. And sometime in the second round, you may change your mind. Oh, I have given wrong answer to question number 7. I have given wrong answer to question number 7. So in the second round, you will correct your answer. In the third round, you will correct your answer. You will improve your answer. Sometimes you will say that, I'm sorry, what I told in the first round was wrong. What Mr. X told is correct. I am agreeing with X. So this way, 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5 rounds will be conducted till the time the facilitator feels that I have got some unanimous, consensus answer from all the experts. Fine. So till you reach that particular stage, you will have as many rounds of questions as you require. That kind of method is called as Delphi method. Okay. So in Delphi method, what we do, we keep on sending the questionnaires. After one round, after another round, we are refining the judgmental data. The judgment, the experiences of each and every expert is refined. People will start responding to the questions in the second round, third round, fourth round based on the answers given by other experts. So the answers, the expressions, the feelings of, opinions of other experts will start influencing the experts in the forthcoming rounds. So that kind of technique is called as Delphi technique. Here, we are trying to obtain, we are trying to share the experts' judgments. Expert judgments, their speculations, their forecasts, their estimate about the future is being collected in Delphi method. Okay. See, Delphi method, as I told you, it was in USA. But there, they are trying to predict how USA will develop in all the spheres of economy. That is what they were trying to do in Delphi method. So in the Delphi method, we are not collecting the data from the individual respondents. Instead, we collect data from the experts. What for? We are trying to forecast what is going to happen in future. Fine? Clear? Okay, good. Let us move on to the next concept. Methods of research. In methods of research, we have survey method, historical method, comparative method, experimental method, and case study method. Different methods are there. Let us discuss about these methods one by one. Okay. Experimental research. See, in experimental research, we are trying to find out the effect of one particular variable on a phenomenon. Okay, you take one particular variable, you are going to study the effect of, we are going to study the effect of one variable on the other variable. Okay, by keeping all other variables constant or controlled. For example, you take one variable called gender. Okay, and there is another variable called number of hours spent on mobile phone. Okay, so you want to find out the effect of gender of the respondent on the duration of using mobile phone. But we are not bothering about all other variables that may influence the use of mobile phones. That kind of study is called as experimental research. Here, we are trying to determine whether is there any relationship between two variables. If there is any relationship, how and in what manner these variables are related to each other. Fine. So what we do is that we decide and we establish a relationship between one variable and other variable in the form of hypothesis, and we are testing the hypothesis in experimental research. Good. See, experimental research is oriented towards future. We conduct a research, we get the answer, and the findings will be applied in future. And here, there are some terms which you need to familiarize yourself. One is randomization. What is randomization? So whenever respondents are going to take part in your research work, you will randomly assign them to two groups. What are the two groups? One is called control group, other is called experimental groups. So 100 students are going to take part in a survey in your experimental research. Out of the 100 students, 50 will be allotted to controlled group, 50 will be allotted to experimental group, but this allocation is taken place randomly, okay, not with a purpose. Okay, then I was telling you about two groups, controlled group and experimental group. What are these groups? See, controlled group is a group where we are not going to do any kind of experiment. No testing will be done there. Otherwise, in the experimental group, we do all kinds of experiments, all kind of testing in experimental groups. Okay, that is the difference between controlled group and experimental group. For example, you have 100 patients, okay, all are diabetic patients, okay, and you divide them into two groups randomly, okay. You take one group as controlled group, you are not giving them any treatment. No treatment is given to them, okay. So they are as usual, they are taking food, they are enjoying their life, okay. There is another group called experimental group. For this group, you give them a specific tablet or you follow a particular diet and you check for, you give them for 1 month. After 1 month, you check and find out whether the diabetics condition of controlled group is better than the diabetic condition of controlled group, okay. So in the experimental group, tests are conducted. Please understand these two groups. Then comes, in experimental research, we talk about external validity and internal validity. What is external validity? To what extent the findings of your study can be generalized. So you got some findings, whether these findings can be applied to other groups, other places, other libraries, other institutions. That is called external liability. What is internal liability? To what extent your experimental research is reliable? Can we rely upon the results given by your study? That is called internal validity. Okay. For example, you are doing a study on the effect of user education on users' efficiency of searching databases. These are research you do. Here, user education is an independent variable. Search efficiency is a dependent variable. You want to find out whether user education has created any difference among the users in terms of their efficiency to conduct the search. That is called experimental research. A very, very popular experimental research is what was conducted by C.W. Cleverdon in the University of Cranfield. That is called Cranfield Research Experiments. Phase 1, Phase 2. It was conducted for 10 years. They were trying to experiment 5 different indexing languages and their effectiveness. Okay, it's the best example for experimental research in the field of library science. In experimental research, either you can have single group experimental research or you can have 2 groups experimental research. In single group, for example, you have 100 students, okay, 100 students. You just give them some mathematical tests. You see what is the score they get. Same children, you take tuition for 1 month. After 1 month, you again conduct maths test. You see how much they are scoring. So same students are pre-tested and post-tested. That is called a single group experimental research. What is 2 groups? In the 2 groups method, we are in 2 groups. One controlled group, one experimental group. In controlled groups, no testing, no teaching, no tuition. In the experimental group, you do tuition, you do pre-test and post-test. Okay, 2 group study. See, what are the various parts of an experiment? We have subject, experimental group, control group, treatment, independent variable, dependent variable, pre-test, post-test, and random assignment. These are all parts of experiment. Variable, you know, something which changes is called variable. Maybe gender, nativity, education qualification, all these are variables. Independent variable is called experimental variable. As I told you, know, gender, education qualification, nativity, user education program, computer knowledge, all these are independent variables. What about the dependent variable? The subject variable, the outcome variable, the effect variable is called as dependent variable. Mark scored by the student. The quality of an individual judged by the individuals in terms of 5-point scale. All those are dependent variables. I told you about experimental group. What is a treatment? Treatment is a condition. I told you, no. See, for one group you are taking tuition, the other group you are not taking tuition. One group you are conducting user education program, in the other group you are not conducting user education programs. This is called treatment. Subject means the students, faculty members, research scholars, librarians, all are becoming the subjects of your experimental research. Then comes random assignment. I told you, you are deciding who will go to controlled group and who will go to experimental group. In the experimental study, you are talking about cause and effect relationship. To what extent independent variable is causing the dependent variable to happen. That is cause and effect relationship. You have pre-test, you have post-test. Before starting the test, you give a test. After completion of test, after completing a treatment, you conduct another test. I told you, no, before taking tuition, how much mark they get, you conduct a test. That is called a pre-test. After tuition is over, again you conduct a maths test. You see how much they score. That is called post-test. Good. So what are steps in experimental research? You have to select the problem. You have to set whether you are going to have a laboratory environment, you are going to do research in laboratory, or you are going to conduct your experiment in a field. Field may be a library, field may be a park, field may be any kind of section library, anywhere you can conduct your field experiment. Then you conduct a pilot study. Accordingly, you have a research design, you conduct the experiment, and then you evaluate the experiment. Okay. So in experimental research, we talk about internal validity and we talk about external validity, which I described a couple of minutes before. Okay. Then comes survey method. It's a very, very popular method in social sciences. This is a method where at a single point of time, we go to people in person. Okay. Personally, we meet the people. We collect the data from either population or sample. So that method is called as survey method. This is also called as fact finding study. You go to people, ask questions, get the answers and come back. That's all. How to collect data? You can use observations, interviews or questionnaires. Anything can be used. Survey method is very, very popular when you are geographically, your sample is scattered. For example, you want to study the attitude of people towards Covaxin in India. It's a very, very wide area. You can go for survey study. Okay. And always survey study is oriented towards present. Experimental research is pointing towards future. Survey method is oriented towards present. The best example is INFRAS study, which was conducted in UK 1960s. Information requirements of social scientists. That is an experiment which was conducted in UK. It's the best example for a survey research study. Good. Then comes historical method. It's a very popular method. Please understand, historical method is not history. Okay. Historical method is a method of conducting research. Historical method can be adopted in any discipline. You can study, you can apply historical method in any subject. Absolutely no problem. So what is historical study? Here we are studying the past records. We are studying other past information sources so that we will be able to understand how a particular institution was originated, how it was developing over a period of time, what was the ups and downs it had during its history. So that kind of study is called as historical study. Here We are systematically examining past events. Whatever happened in the past, we are systematically examining so that we'll be able to exactly identify and tell us what was actually happened in the past. That is historical research. So here what we do, we are collecting the data systematically. We are evaluating the data objectively so that even we can test. If at all you have hypothesis in historical study, even that can be tested in historical research so that you will get a grasp of what happened in the past so that you will understand your present and you can estimate your future. So that kind of study is called as historical research. It is very much a descriptive in nature. It is past oriented. You can apply historical research in all subjects. But please understand, observation is a method which cannot be used in historical method because we cannot go to past and see what happened. Okay, there is only one issue in historical research. Fine. In historical research, we talk about internal criticism and external criticism. What are they? See, while you are doing historical research, you go to wide different areas, you collect data. Once you collect information resources that may support your research, you have to check to what extent the data, the information resources, the sources you collected are true. You have to check. How to check? Based on external criticism and internal evaluation. What is external criticism? You have to check the physical aspects of the resource. For example, if you're having a book means you have to check whether this book is originally the very old one. How to check it? Whether it is published 20 years before or 200 years before. How to check it? You can check the color of the paper. What kind of color paper was used in the text? What kind of printing style is used? What kind of script is used? What kind of language and words are used? What kind of ink and paper was used? What kind of binding was used? So all these physical qualities of the resources can be checked. Okay, that is called external criticism. What is internal criticism? Here we are bothered about the content of the document. If you're having a book, you say that this book was published 400 years before, you have to check the authenticity of the content of the book. How to check the authenticity? Authority. Means who published this book. If you say that a history book is published by a particular author, you can say it's a very good book. Yeah, library science book written by Dr. S.R. Rangana, no doubt is a very good book. So that kind of authority. Author's relation. To what extent author is related to the historical novel he has written. Maybe he may be the old grandson of the particular event, something like that. Or consistency of year or incidents. Whether the year given by the author in the book, year of publication of the book, are they coinciding to each other or not? So you can check the real content of the book. So these two are called external criticism and internal evaluation in respect of historical methods. Fine. Okay. In library science, you've got different historical research. You can talk about origin. You're studying how public library movement was born in Tamil Nadu. That is historical research. You study the growth of college libraries in Punjab. There is a growth study. You study how in the international level various library standards are being developed over a period of time. Development. You study about the impact of IT on the library service in UK during the last 50 years. Historical study. Use of computers in public libraries in America from 1991 to present. Historical study. Personality. You take one individual library science. You study the history of that particular person. It is called personalities. That is historical research. You study the history of theories. You study how a particular library was flourishing, how it was born, how it was progressing, how it was shining, how it went to the hell. Okay, the whole dawn to dusk of a library can be studied in precise. Then history of only association from 1 year to 1 year. So all these different studies are categorized as historical research in library science. Okay. There is a gentleman who classified historical research into these 6 categories. One Hilway is there. He says, you study biography. Okay, that means life history of other person. or you study the history of institutions or organizations, or you investigate the sources. It's something like what is going in Tamil Nadu. No? We have called excavation studies in Keeladi and all. They are called investigation of sources. Then you take very old history documents, you try to translate those documents. That is also historical research. You study history of ideas. You compile bibliographies of past records. So all these are 6 categories of historical research as given by Hilve. Fine. What is the process? How to conduct historical research? You have to identify the research topic, formulate the problem, collect the background information, you formulate the questions. If possible, you can even formulate hypotheses. Have a systematic collection of reviews, evidences, data. After the collection of reviews or evidences, you check the truthfulness and reliability of evidences. Then based on the resources you collected, you write the interpretation and you present the report. That is the process of historical research. And what are the primary sources that can be used in historical research? We have government documents, institutional documents, letters, memorandums, speeches of great individuals, minutes of the conferences, photographs of people, buildings, tally sheets, surveys, equipments, the rules and regulations given by a particular government, particular agency, or after the occurrence of an event, sometimes we prepare a chronicles, we prepare a diary, we prepare a report. Journalists will prepare a small summary of what happened, their drawings, their pictures, video recordings. They also can be taken. Or even after 30 or 40 years of happening of an event, now if you go to people will tell stories, oral histories. Yes, that time I was a very young child. That time Akbar came, Gandhi came, he did that, this, oral histories, folk tales, folk stories. So all these things can be taken as. Apart from that, you get coins, which was used in those days, inscriptions, seals used by them, drawings used in that particular period, pictures used, realia, we say realia, actual things. So all these things can be considered as primary sources for historical research. Okay. Then comes comparative method of research. It is a research where we are trying to compare two entities which are of similar nature. You take 2 college libraries or 2 engineering college libraries, or you take 2 different library softwares, you take 2 different kind of libraries, you compare these 2 systems to find out what is the plus point in each and every system. What is the problem? What are the shortcomings of each and every system? Which is the best system? Which system is having more plus points? Which system is having more minus points? So all these things can be done in comparative method of research, where we are trying to compare 2 things of different cultures, different nations, different timings, and different tools can be compared. The tools used by your library to reach the users in pandemic period, the tools used by your neighboring library in reaching users in the pandemic period. You compare these 2, you find out which tools are better, which is effective, which is ideal, which can be recommended. So that is called comparative method of research. For example, you can compare the strength of 2 libraries, weakness of 2 libraries, if effective points available in each libraries, the features of 2 libraries. You are having Scopus database, they are having Web of Science database. You can conduct a comparative study of the efficiency of retrieval mechanisms of Scopus database and Web of Science database. You can talk about the efficiency of your textbook collection and the textbook collection of neighboring libraries. Okay, the whole purpose is we want to find out which is the best system, which is the best service, which is the best program, which is the best library. So to find out the best of the available entities, we conduct comparative method of research. Okay, I think this is the last one, case study method. See, case study method is an in-depth method, a study which is a very, very comprehensive study. So you start from 0 and go to 100. The top to bottom of a particular topic is going to be analyzed. Okay, maybe an individual, maybe a social group. You take the librarians or you take science teachers, or you take PG students, okay, small group. It can be a process, it can be a situation, it can be a library program, it can be an institution, or it can be any social. So any social unit can be taken, and you have to conduct an in-depth study, a very comprehensive study, that is called case study method. In the case study, we are trying to trace out the life history of the entire unit. If you take one particular individual, you study his entire life history. If you take a particular institution, you study the entire history. You are studying about the factors that have a kind of interaction in the growth of that particular individual. How this particular institution has grown to such a great level. What are the developments that took place during the different phases of the growth of this institution? Okay, for example, there is a child of 15 years old. He is not mentally well. He doesn't like anything. He doesn't do anything. He's having some problem. So what doctor does? Doctor takes the child into consideration, and the doctor tries to see the entire life history of the child. Whatever happened in the past in the child's life, all those things were considered, and the doctor tries to give some remedial measures. Okay, this is F. Replay, who introduced this particular case study method. See what is the quality or characteristics of this method. It's a very deep method where we do a detailed study, an intensive study. It is a qualitative study. It is not a quantitative, qualitative study. We study about all the traits or qualities of the units, whatever you have chosen. Okay, and we study the wholeness. We don't study in fraction or fragmented research. It is a wholesome research. We study all the complex factors. We take all the traits and qualities and the interlocking and the interlinking of all the qualities, the influence of complex factors and simple factors, simple traits. All these things are studied in a detailed manner in case study research. Okay. So as far as case study is concerned, the case can be an individual, it can be one library or a section of a library, or it can be a specific service of the library, or specific program of a library, or a specific library software. Absolutely no. Anything can be the case for a case study. What are different types of case study? Historical, observational, situational, clinical, multi-stage, exploratory, descriptive, and explanatory case study. That means case study method can be adopted in all these different research methods also. Okay, good. What about the sources of data? Where from you can collect data for conducting case study? See, we cannot depend on a single data. We depend on many kinds of data. For example, you depend on life histories, personal records, personal letters, confessions. See, people go and give confessional search, so that kind of confessions. The biographies or autobiographies. The persons are alive, you can have interviews. If people are alive, you can go and have an observation. So all these things can be combined and used for case study research. What are steps involved in case study method? First of all, you should find out what is the present status of that particular case. If you take a child who is mentally having some problem, you are trying to find out what is the present problem of the child. First step. Second step, collect the background information. What were the problems or causes that made the boy reach this particular standard, particular stage, second stage. And thirdly, you are finding out what are the problems faced by the child now at present. And fourthly, you collect data about all his past details. You try to suggest some measures that will help us to solve the problem. And lastly, after implementing the suggestions, you see what is the effect of your recommendation. That is what the whole case study is all about. Okay, then see what are the areas in which case study can be introduced in libraries: in automation, impact of IT, performance of library consortia, development of library networks like InflipNet. So all those things can be studied using case study method in research. Okay, maybe I think the last slide, 2 slides. So solo research done by an individual. Modern research is always a team-oriented, object-oriented research. I was telling you about empirical research. What is the right sequence of these 4 items? You have axiom. Axiom means the words given by old people in the villages. Axiom. So based on that, you form hypothesis. Hypothesis tested, that becomes law. And laws is being used in many years, that becomes a theory, established theory. That is an order. Okay, fine. There is a gentleman called Sculter who identified 15 steps for credible research. If you want to conduct a reliable research, what are the 15 steps you need to follow? Fine. Okay. This is the last slide that gives a summary of different kinds of research methods. Basic research talks about creation of knowledge. Applied research tries to get a solution for a problem. Action research is a kind of applied research meant for local problems. Descriptive research, it describes the current situation. Comparative method, it compares two similar entities. Exploratory research, it tries to explore the new concepts. Diagnostic research, it tries to find out the causes behind the happening of certain things. And social research is very, very vast research conducted over a wide geographical area having lot of social implications. Okay, yes. So that is about the second part of my presentation. So unit 9.2 is over. Maybe we'll take 5 more minutes. Question answer discussion we'll have at another day. Okay, maybe on the third day we'll have a question answer discussion. Day after tomorrow we'll discuss about unit 9.3 and 9.4. And Friday we'll have question answer session for first 4 units together. Okay, fine. That is my plan. So we'll take 5 minutes for question answers, your doubts in the topics what we have been discussing in the last 1.5 hours. Please. You can ask for your clarification, please. Yes, any questions? About different research methods, what we have been discussing. Any question, please? Yes. Vandana, any question? Vandana, any question? Anupama, any question?
Sir.
LB, you asked lots of questions to WhatsApp. LB, you got some question to ask me?
Sir, can you explain cohort study?
Okay. See, we have 2 different kinds of research studies based on how many times you will go and collect data from the respondents. If you collect data only once, that is called a cross-sectional research work. If you are collecting data from the respondents more than once, that is called longitudinal research. In longitudinal research, you have 3 different methods: trend study, panel study, and cohort study. In the cohort study, you collect data not once, but you collect data 2 times, 3 times, 4 times from the same population, but not from the same sample. Okay, same population. What is the population? For example, the students those cleared net examination in 2021. So that is a common population. In this population, you divide this population into specific small groups, 5 to 6 groups. You collect data from the first group this year. After 6 months, you collect data from the second group. Second year, you go and collect data from the third group. At the end of second year, you go and collect data from the fourth group. So this way, you collect data from the same population, but not from the same sample. You go and collect data from the people 3 or 4 times. So that kind of data collection, that kind of research work is called cohort studies, which is very, very popular in medical field, which is very popular in clinical research works. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, Divya, any question? Sumi, is there any question? Or Meera, any question? No other question? So if no question is there, then Shall we wind up session then? There's no question means. Anupama, go ahead. Tell me.
Actually, it's a difficult topic. So after reading all these, then only I can ask something.
Okay. But what I basically felt was that these are very, very common, the very, very theoretical, very fundamental concepts. You might have prepared same topics both for your first paper and library science. So I don't think you'll have much problem in understanding these different research methods. There are also no problem. You can go through these things. If at all you're having any doubt, then Friday when we're having a question and answer session for first 4 units, you can ask your questions. Absolutely no problem.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay.
So thank you so much, and we are meeting day after tomorrow with the units 9.3 and 9.4. Okay. So thank you so much. I think I don't know whether Amir is able to listen to me or not. So thank you, Amir, and thank you, students, for your patient listening. Let's meet again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Amir, am I audible to you, Amir, now? I think I'm not audible. So let me leave the meeting. Thank you so much.